Welcome to the important discussion on bridging Westasia and India, capital, commerce and technology in a new era of integration. As global economic dynamics shift, the strategic connection between India and Westasia has never been more vital, as you heard through the day, encompassing capital flows, commercial partnerships and technological collaboration. Tonight we are privileged to have a panel of eminent leaders with deep experience across public policy, sovereign and private capital, regional economic strategy and cross-border investment. Their collective insight will help us explore how India and Westasia can co-design future-ready investment frameworks, deepen commercial ties, and leverage technology to accelerate integration for mutual and sustainable growth. To begin with, Mr. Jayant Sinha, you're able to hear me, yeah?
It's here.
Sorry, just checking with people on the call. You're able to hear me?
Nazem.
Yes, I believe the voice is not very clear.
Gaurav, you have to speak loudly.
Speak loudly? Okay. I'll try again. So, starting with Mr. Jayant Sinha, of course, former Minister of State for Finance and Civil Aviation, a Member of Parliament, as well as association with McKinsey in the private sector. So, for me, the first question to kick off the discussion is, how can India and West Asian economies create policy frameworks that encourage cross-border capital flows while ensuring macroeconomic stability?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and good evening to everybody who's present here and to my distinguished panelists. To your question about policy frameworks, my response would be that the policy frameworks are already in place. We already have a free trade agreement, investment flows are already quite strong, trade and people linkages are extremely strong as well. And all that we have to do is to build on that very strong foundation and keep identifying those concrete business and investment opportunities where we can work together collaboratively. I'll highlight 3 areas where I think the policy frameworks are very much in place, where business opportunities are coming up, but if we pay just a little bit more attention, we can unlock some wonderful opportunities for investors and business people, whether they be in India or in the UAE or in Western Asia, generally. Number 1, I'll talk about technology.
Yeah.
What is happening in technology in the UAE in terms of investments in hyperscalers, compute is extraordinary. The amount of capital that's going in, the access to compute that Westasia has is an enormous resource for India as well, because we have the tech services companies, we have the tech talent where we can take advantage of the compute that Westasia has. So to develop these agentic AI services, to develop these technology services that we can collectively put together and then be able to provide the rest of the world, the combination of the compute that exists in Westasia, the capital that exists in Westasia, and the talent that exists in India, I think is an enormous opportunity for both countries, and the collaboration frameworks are very much in place there. So that's number 1. Number 2, I would talk about sustainability and energy in particular. We've talked about energy a fair bit today, but there's a lot more to be done here. Solar obviously is an area where both India and the UAE can benefit greatly in terms of what we are doing. But natural gas is another area where we can benefit, which will really help clean up our cities, because we need to be able to transition trucks, buses, etc. from fossil fuels, diesel and petrol to actually CNG if we can, and into electric vehicles as well. So there's an enormous opportunity to work together on sustainable infrastructure, sustainable investing. And the third area, which is not spoken about as much, but I'd like to highlight, is in healthcare. So what we've seen in Westasia is Westasia has already built quite a number of leading medical centers. They are already going to be, I think, an important area for patients coming from around the world and coming to Westasia. But India has again the talent, India has again in many cases the protocols where we can service the healthcare needs of Western Asia, either by sending people here or by providing telemedicine services as well. So I think if you look at these three sectors, in each of these sectors, we already have a lot of the frameworks in place, we have the talent, we have the linkages, and we can really build on that and drive investment into these different opportunities. The final one, which also people have spoken about, I won't talk much about it because the markets are very tightly regulated and investment flows are not that easy, is in the financial sector. There's activity happening there, but I think perhaps not as substantial as it could be in the other three sectors that I spoke about.
Well, thank you very much. Moving on, so my next question is for Mr. Pankaj Gupta, the co-founder and co-CEO for Gulf Islamic Investments. Of course, you have deep experience in investment banking, private equity, and especially in Sharia-compliant investing across GCC and India. So from your perspective, what investment models are proving most effective in channelizing Gulf capital into high-growth sectors in India?
Thank you for having me, Gaurav. And my big hello to my distinguished panelist. So I'll just pick up on what Jayant said. There are frameworks, there are policy. What we need, and I would like to double down upon it because I see it day in, day out as a private capital. We have to deepen these existing opportunities or existing frameworks. And coming back to your question, see, there are multiple ways where we can unlock value on both the side. And taking this fourth point, capital, which is actually my day-to-day job, is the most important thing. And I would like to quote from an actual business which we are doing. And that shows what kind of opportunity exists. See, at both the ends, at GRE level, at big corporates, capital is there in one form or the other. The biggest requirement of capital is at SME level, whether it is in India or the West Asia. And in my opinion, that is one big area where a lot could be done. So the example which I want to quote is from our business, which we own a digital bank out of EDGM, regulated by FSRA. It is a bank focused on trade finance, and we are trying to work between in the corridor between India, GCC, and taking to, let's say, Africa, or GCC, India, and other part of Asia. So we realize that there are a lot of small and medium enterprises which are exporting into UAE or GCC and vice versa, and they don't get working capital or as good as trade finance. Where we have come up with a product called PDAC, which is purchasing debt against commodities, and have unlocked cash or working capital or supply chain finance for these kind of suppliers. So these are the things where we have, this is what I want to emphasize upon, we have to go deeper and just not talk or discuss certain trends. So coming back, SME sector is a great area where a lot can be developed either in terms of investment and building businesses. Second, I'm a big believer of AI and tech-led services. There's a huge opportunity between India and West Asia on that side. Because from this part of the world, they are looking for long-term annuities. And India is looking for that kind of a capital, and they can provide that scale. So there's a natural, I would say, affinity or the natural opportunity which exists to be exploited. So that is another area where sovereign wealth funds, big family offices, institutions can actually deploy capital for long term. And in reality, if you look at it, today, for this corridor, it's not a question whether one should put money or not. The question is that how we can allocate capital on a long-term basis and have steady returns. So this is what my take would be.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Mr. Raja AlMarzoqi, Chief Economic Advisor, Ministry of Economy and Planning for Saudi Arabia. So you're an economist with experience in macroeconomic policy and long-term economic planning, and now you're an advisor on regional economic integration and diversification strategy, and especially for discussions around Vision 2030. So from Saudi Arabia's economic planning perspective, What are the key enablers for deeper economic integration with India?
Thanks. I think it's an important issue for the time being. First, before we tackle this one, to look at it from the global perspective. Globalization, as we're seeing, facing attack. This attack increasing the uncertainty, increasing risk, which affecting the flow of investment and also innovation. So if we look at it in the integration side and how can GCC, and specifically Saudi Arabia and India cooperate, then it's become an important how to tackle the structure of the relations as the multilateral institutions a little bit weaker in the time being, and we have no idea what is going to face in the future. So look like the most important part for the time being to reduce this uncertainty and risk to handle or to sign a free trade agreement, where bilateral agreement between such kind of a bloc, as you know, GCC bloc is now ranked as number 9 globally. India is ranked number 4. In trade, GCC ranked as number 5. In capital market, it's ranked as number 7. So it's a huge possibility of unlocked potentials between the two parts. I think it's not been utilized yet. So first, the R&D and research on such issues that related to innovation and AI and technology, which now we are in the mid of it, maybe in the beginning of it, more than in the mid of it. So we need a lot of work in this regard, hopefully, to help both countries or both parties to unlock a lot of potential in AI. And if you look at the Saudi economy specifically, under Vision 23, one of the main ideas how to shift the Saudi economy from government-led growth to private sector-led growth, and also diversifying the economy. As a result, the need to increase non-oil export. So with these objectives, then we expected to build a new sectors not been exist before, expand the current sectors like industrial, which is just only 10 or 11% of the total GDP, and the hope to increase it to more than 20%. With this potential, then it's become the trade and the agreement between India and Saudi Arabia, important for the technology, transfer of the technology, and also selling capital good products. Because if you want to develop the new sectors, then you need a new technology, you need the know-how, and also you need capital goods. So it's not only trading and have this integration on final good, but also in capital goods and in technology and know-how, which will help in the future to create a continuous and last long relations, economic relation between these two blocks. And what's going in the globe, it's need from both of us to consider how can we solve the global issue also, because without solving this one, as all of you know that, globalization has become like a public good. Each one of us affected by it. 70% of trade now in value chains. 2/3 of the trade of the GDP. I mean, the trade is equivalent to 2/3 of the GDP. So if you look at it from this angle, it's not only how to integrate as two parties, but also how to cooperate to help reducing uncertainty and building the multilateral system, helping stabilizing the global economy.
Thank you. I think very important points about multilateral trade and capital flows plus technology infrastructure flowing both ways. Just moving on. So, Mr. Suresh Kumar, the next question for you, Chairman Emeritus for IBPC. Obviously, you're a veteran business leader with long-standing experience in India-Gulf economic relations, actively involved in strengthening institutional and commercial ties between the two regions. So, from your perspective, which sectors offer the strongest potential for India-West Asia commercial partnerships over the next decade?
I think
you would have to start by looking at where are the synergies and clearly looking at the strategic priorities of the West Asian countries, especially let's start with between the UAE and India. I think both are invested in terms of improving the infrastructure. And I think again there are clear synergies there. Infrastructure in this region, the GCC region, is world-class in West Asia generally. And India is getting there across both physical infrastructure and in terms of communication and the whole gamut of technology-related infrastructure. So I think that's a good place to start. You could then cut across in terms of synergies across other sectors as well. Trade between the two regions, especially between the UAE and India, Dubai in particular, has been improving year after year, from going from strength to strength. But investment flows really got a fillip when the Indian Prime Minister, after 34 years, was the first Prime Minister from India to visit this region. In 2015, there was a investment partnership agreement that was signed, and there was a verbal commitment of infrastructure investments of up to $75 billion. But having said that, the partnership agreement had to be put in action, and that's where I think there were challenges at both ends. For instance, since I was quite closely involved at that point in time, the Indian side looked at this as yet another soft loan window. And very often, even at senior levels within the government, there was not sufficient understanding that investment flows from this region are largely either strategic or financial. Many of the sovereign wealth funds are really financial investors. They are looking at investable propositions from the perspective of they're patient capital, but they represent patient capital, but they do need a return on equity or return on the capital that they invest in. That understanding needs to come in place. Equally, you have a number of strategic investors from this region, again representing fairly large pools of capital. But their requirements are different. So I think it's important to get that understanding, and that's where a platform like IBPC or a catalyst like IBPC can bring those minds together, working in close alignment with the strategies at both ends, and then drawing from there, where are they looking ahead? India is talking in terms of objectives from a Viksit Bharat 2047. Here as well, there is a 2031 Dubai strategic plan, there is a 2051 UAE strategic plan. I think it's important to get those alignments right as to where those strategies, because the entire weight of the government and the policies and the institutions at this end and in India will be fully behind if you're aligned with the strategies. And I think that's where the sectors need to come in. And doesn't have to be one sector. It would have to be a series of initiatives across various sectors, both private and public capital coming through, both debt and equity, giving it the tailwinds.
Sure. Thank you very much. Moving on and building upon actually this point. So moving on to Mr. Nazem AlKudsi, former CEO of Invest Abu Dhabi. You can hear me well on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously you have an expertise in investment, promotion, asset management, and global capital allocation. So my question to you is, what lessons from GCC investment markets and your role as the CEO of Invest Abu Dhabi could help India further strengthen investor confidence within the GCC?
Thank you for having me, and thanks to respected participants. Look, I spent 30 years in the Southern Gulf complex, 18 of those Italian. And I can talk a lot of micro, but here I'd like to shift it a bit to macro and then answer your questions. We often have civilization amnesia because I wish they would teach history of economy to schools. The Indian Ocean has been the main trading pathway for thousands of years before European recentrism came. There is quite a bit of DNA between our part of the world and between Bharat. Unfortunately, we got sucked into the globalization, and I am part of that system. We are at different stages of our development cycle, number one. And number two, we have different priorities, and we need stability because the rules keep changing. I don't need to comment on the short term of the political side of the US and the volatility that comes with this. So therefore, I would say that the integration of both economies, this is not about investments, be it short-term or long-term, be it infrastructure or so on. This is about recognizing the fact that in the new economy, the new world future, you are going to have regions of the world where economic borders become more important than physical borders. And the more you integrate your economies at all levels, the more you're going to become a winner. Regarding the question, look, I'm biased towards my country, the UAE, naturally. We created a lot of national champions. And we followed the example of Singapore and Japan and South Korea. But to be fair, let me share with you a quick story. In 2014, I had the pleasure of meeting the Chief Minister of Gujarat, His Excellency Shri Modi, who I am very respectful. And when I was in his office, he looked at me and he said, "Look at that briefcase sitting like this. Do you know what this is, Mr. AlKudsi?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Tomorrow I'm flying to Japan because there is a car manufacturing plant in the neighboring state that was burned due to some labor disputes. And I have in my briefcase all the permits, the entire permits from A to Z, ready for that car manufacturing company to move." But lo and behold, in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, Isuzu established their plant in Gujarat. And to me, that was a pure example of looking at the national interest, looking at the agenda. You know, we often talk about globalization and competitive advantage and all that good stuff that they taught at Harvard, only to see them reversing on this. The Japanese, they established the Japanese Industrial Bank, and they looked at specific sectors of the economy, and they said the entire system should be backing those sectors because this is the future for us. We should not bicker among ourselves and so on. So I would say that in order to integrate our economies, the lessons from UAE, we've created national champions, we've created ADIA, Mubadala, ADQ, we've created Amar, we've created Dubai ports and so on. And we need a similar story which exists more or less on the Indian side. I am not against the private sector, I'm not against the venture, not at all. But when we are looking for a national agenda and we need to move forward, you need to have the state backing those because you get things done faster.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important point about identifying and then promoting national champions for each of the countries as you go outside to raise capital. Moving on to Mr. Riyadh Al-Horabi, partner at SAS Capital. So, of course, you have experience in private investments and cross-border deal structuring with a focus on growth, stage, and strategic investments. So, my question to you is, how do you see risk-return dynamics evolving for cross-border investments between the Gulf and India? I think just before our panel, we had a discussion with the CEO of Emeritus NBD Capital, where they had just made an investment in India. So really looking forward to hear your views on this.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Yeah, just to repeat the question, how do you see the risk-return dynamics evolving for cross-border investments between the Gulf and India?
The return dynamics, right?
The return dynamics, yes.
Yes, yes. We are in a
we have deep relations, as everybody knows, with India. Okay, as an economy, as an investment, I think the main two issues that is the relation between the two, let's say, countries is basically, from the DCD perspective, is tax, is the main thing. So we, a lot of investment other than the sovereign fund has an issue with understanding taxation in India, especially things like tax and capital gain is a big thing for us in this part of the world. The other thing is the regulatory framework, where we believe in this part of the world that India is a bit complicated for us to understand foreign investment. So, as we said, between investing in India and the other way, recently, I think in the last 2 years, it's the first time we saw law coming from India to Saudi Arabia, where the company is trying to open to benefit from the transformation in Saudi, what's happening with the government. I think the Indian investors feel more comfortable to come and invest in Saudi compared to previously. Issue again, as everybody has mentioned, it's all the investment mainly coming from the big players, okay, where we don't see a lot of SMEs, let's say, going and investing in India. And I think a lot of initiatives need to be done from the government to help in that. Again, everybody in this part of the world in themselves believe that India is a big market, is a big growing industry, in all especially in services. But the challenge is very few successful stories that have been done in a smaller level. And this will always be the challenge, I think, for new people to come and invest. I'll just give you an example, like Abdulatif, which is one of the biggest car manufacturers or agents in Saudi Arabia. They invested in a company in the EV, electrical vehicle, scope industry in India. And suddenly there is a change in regulation where the investment or subsidy from the government has gone down. And the whole investment went into trouble. So this kind of example is always a challenge with the Saudis going investing there. So returns, again, not a lot of stories happening. Yes, we hear Mubadala, BIF, during big deals. I think the government should support funded funds that target SMEs, giving them the financing as well, encouraging them to have a few good successful stories that they can promote, and this will attract investment and attract also good return. Without this, I think it will stay between the big government, semi-government initiatives, and it will remain in this direction.
Riyadh, I will agree, Mia Filmia with you.
Yes.
Yeah, it goes back to the point Mr. Pankaj you made, which is the investment in SMEs is what is lacking or does not exist between the West Asian countries and the Indian.
See, Gaurav, I don't want to touch on the controversial part, but I think these kind of forums are also important to raise certain issues, because at the end of the day, life is not black or white, it is gray. See, the point which Riyadh is talking about, when it comes to government or, GRE investing, sovereign wealth fund investing, there is quote unquote a protection, because governments are involved and they will make sure that nothing unpleasant is happened and a lot of groundwork is done. And again, it is not the responsibility of the governments to stay guarantor to the private capital, but at the same time, I would say a, a lot of work can be done on the understanding of governance. I don't want to talk about the tax part because too complicated even from my standard, but especially that when Riyadh talked about this EV thing, you know, we ourselves are sort of victim of that. The policies which, or the government approach towards the policy was disheartening, to say the least, you know, and that these kind of incidents actually create noise, which is a very relevant and genuine noise, and it discourages a lot of private capital. See, at the end of the day, if you look at it today, the trade between India and whole of GCC is give and take about $160 billion. In my opinion, I have been here for 28 years. I think it can grow multifold looking at the capacity and the potential of India and West Asia, both. But some work has to be done. And again, anybody, no matter what period of time we talk about, maybe 20 years down the line, somebody would be sitting here talking the same thing. But the work which I am talking about is very, very basic structural work. We, you know, especially when India is looking to extend the scale and talent which India offers and wants the capital from this region, India has to do quite a bit of a work to attract. And the point which I want to make very, very clearly, see, this place is a confluence of capital, is a confluence of businesses. Money, investors come globally. So India has to compete with these global opportunities. And I'll give you an example. Today, if I were to sit here and, you know, how many countries in the world you can get AAA credit like of Amazon at a 8-9% dollar cap rate? You won't. So if I were to there deploy capital sitting here, I have multiple choices. So India has to look from that angle that are we really offering competitive and those kind of opportunities which can withstand the competition. So I think that's the point I would like to have.
No, clear. Thank you very much for raising that. I think just moving back, I think I'm also mindful of the time and the next session. So Mr. Jayant, coming back to you, I think you laid down a very clear 3-point agenda of what is needed. If I were to just ask you, looking ahead for the next decade, what single initiative could deepen this economic integration between West Asia and India?
Well, I mean, let me answer that by answering also the question that Pankaj has posed, which is how do you deal with policy risk? And the best thing that businesses and investors can do, whether it's in India or in West Asia, is to be proactive with policymakers. And to do that, you have to be prepared to understand how policymakers think about issues. Policymakers are not necessarily staying up at night wondering about what returns you're going to generate and whether you're going to do DPI for your investors or not. They are thinking more about, are we creating jobs and are we solving the problems that people are facing on a day-to-day basis. So you have to be proactive and understand what is it that policymakers are trying to solve for and show that the investments and the businesses that you're building are solving the problems of day-to-day people. So please be proactive in that regard, understand what is it that policymakers want to accomplish, and if you then deliver a solution for them, deliver answers for them, you'll find that they will be very helpful to you.
Thank you, Jayant. Moving on, I think I'll just pose the same question, moving on, Mr. Raja, to you, which is looking ahead next decade, what single initiative or partnership with Saudi Arabia would you think of that could deepen the economic integration between Saudi Arabia and India?
Thanks. I think when it's come to the investment, let's take the investment now as a way of integrated the both Saudi Arabia and India. Without signing bilateral investment agreement, it's become risky on the investors and risky in flow of capitals. You know, GCC countries and Saudi Arabia specifically, they are globally invested, either in individual levels or also in sovereign wealth fund, where it's extremely needed to have such kind of initiative. This is first. Second, I think aligning the policies to be sure to reduce the uncertainty and risk on investors and encourage joint projects among both nations, and possibly for the capital market do listing for some big companies. A cooperation on specifically new energy where it's extremely needed for the future, and I think both nations have the ability either as know-how or also as a capital where it's located, and this is one of the targets of Saudi Arabia. So I think these is kind of initiatives that if it in place, in addition to signing the GCC Indian Free Trade Agreement, because this is where also you will be able to reduce the uncertainty on investors and make it more directly and flow of trade, investment has been quoted by many empirical study. Any signing of FTA among two nations, it's redirect the trade and helping the integration of nations.
Thank you very much. Mr. Suresh, moving on to you. So one bold vision or step or initiative that you think, which would deepen the integration between West Asia and India in the next decade?
I think the integration is already happening, and it's a little naive for me to think that one step or one vision is sufficient to keep it going in that direction. I think what is needed is at the macro level, at the leadership level, it's already happening. The chemistry is good, the initiatives are there, the framework is there in place. Where it gets challenged often is in situations like what Pankaj and the gentleman from KSA mentioned, which is, it really needs a framework to address those kind of issues. It would be easy for someone to say that regulatory actions impact me, and therefore there's a problem with the regulatory action, because the intended and unintended consequences can never be anticipated and mitigated against in matters like these. I think where it needs is, for instance, you need a fund which would enable private investors to co-invest in situations like this, which takes into account, manages the regulatory risks that are inherent in every system. You can't privatize profits and socialize losses. In no country is that going to be acceptable. So, if you ask me, I think, as was mentioned earlier, there are significant pools of investable capital, patient capital in the GCC, long-term capital. And there is significant growth opportunity potential as the economy speeds ahead in India, third largest, fourth largest, to possibly the second largest in the north, by 2047. So I think that's where the synergies can be best achieved by making sure that capital flows are easy and
fungible.
Many of the panelists that mentioned about it, making sure that capital flows very smoothly without an issue, etc. And then it will find its own levels.
Well, thank you. Mr. Nazem, on the screen, any comments? Any comments to wrap up from your side?
Yes, I'll make a quick comment about integrating the economies. I was looking at my very, very young granddaughter, and I said to myself, when she grows up, she's not going to know anything other than AI. Now, I want to commend our brothers in Saudi, because they are putting a lot of effort on building their own LLM. We in UAE are building our own LLM. Here's the issue. There are cultural and heritage deep issues that we share that perhaps other parts of the world don't share with us. And for those that specialize in this field, they know that whether it's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and others, they have a core, very private document that defines morality and a lot of other things. And what I want to see is for our children and grandchildren to be able to have cooperation among those LLMs that reflects the values and culture of our region, not the values and cultures of very far away regions that I still respect, but they are different than ours. This would be very, very important. I'd love to see some cooperation in that front.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Riyad Al-Rabi, Just final comments from your side. I mean, I think the example of Abdul Latif Jamil that you gave was... Yeah, and I think that was very important. So any suggestions from your side, which is acceptable? Yeah.
Okay, I will just give an example. So my colleagues and they mentioned most of let's say, the opportunities or move forward. But I want to add one thing. Things like Saudi and India both now going more into having local content, for example, in their manufacturing, okay, to catch up with the rest of the world. And initiatives maybe can be on a sector-specific theme. For example, India is doing a medical equipment city, okay, where they try the government initiative to have all to replace all the import in medical equipment and related businesses in India, okay? So Saudi, for example, has something similar. So what can happen is that this medical city or initiative with the R&D can have some collaboration in Saudi, having all these companies in conferences or gatherings and different initiatives to have something similar in Saudi. So both will have, they can use the same R&D, they can even manufacturers in India and move to Saudi and they can sell to the rest of the world, having Saudi has a low custom duty to the US and Europe. So I think, to summarize it, having sector-specific theme initiatives that is led by the government so that these initiatives can reach the SMEs and small businesses so they can understand what other countries have in the same sector. This will be my suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Riyad. I think that brings us to a close for this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thanks a lot. Now may I request Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi to come forward and help us in paying our gratitude to the gentleman. Ms. Meenakshi Lekhi, ladies and gentlemen, former MOS External Affairs, Government of India, and she is also part of the governing team of CIEU. Ma'am, thank you very much. So we are really thankful that Raja. Starting with Jayant Sinha, former MOS Finance, Civil Aviation. And he was also heading the Standing Committee on Finance in the last Parliament in India. Pankaj Gupta, he is CEO of Gulf Investment. Gulf Islamic Investments in Dubai. He is co-founder and co-CEO there. Raja AlMarzoqi, he is chief negotiator for GCC Secretariat for GCCs. He is a very respected economist in the region. and I personally have consulted him with many issues. Shri Suresh Kumar, Chairman Emeritus, Ibpc. Gaurav Bhandari. And actually, if you can go in center and get the picture down. So, a lot of heavy hitting in the day. If I can request the staff to help us in rearranging the chairs, we just need 2 chairs now. Center 2. So, recoding the Gulf, designing climate conscious luxury for shared future. The man who is changing the way luxuries and real estate is being changed is a very, very known name in India as well as in Dubai circuits. Shri Vivek Oberoi, Indian actor and entrepreneur and part of BMW's team. To moderate this wonderful conversation, may I request Jagjit Singh Sareen. He is part of Dalberg and CIEU.
From his very first film, the renowned actor captivated critics and audiences, garnering numerous awards and achieving unparalleled commercial success. While the world has seen him as a prolific actor, there is another side to him that only a few know. As the chief patron for the Cancer Patients Aid Association, he has supported over 250,000 underprivileged children fight cancer over the last 2 decades. Through Project Davy, he has rescued over 14,000 girls from child labor and abuse. Serves as a goodwill ambassador for the World Health Organization and many other global initiatives. He has been instrumental in the 2004 post-tsunami relief efforts, rebuilding 3 villages and donating more than 650 family homes beyond the 64 wards across business, philanthropy and cinema. He was the first and only Indian actor to be recognized on the Forbes 40 Under 40 Philanthropic Heroes list. An inspiration to many, his unwavering commitment to philanthropy has led to the conferral of an honorary doctorate, recognizing his extraordinary contributions to society. Dr. Vivek Anand Oberoi is a serial entrepreneur of Oberoi Family Office. His expertise from fundraising to strategic partnerships has driven exponential growth for numerous companies, guiding many to successful IPOs. Presenting the entrepreneur and philanthropist, Dr. Vivek Anand Oberoi.
Ladies and gentlemen, the rock star and now our rock star entrepreneur Vivek Oberoi in conversation with our rock star Jagjit Singh Sareen sir.
Thank you, Invest. I ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮਾਈਕ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈ ਸਕਦਾ
ਔਨ ਨਹੀਂ
I think it's gonna work.
ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ
All right. See?